According to the Vedas, the most ancient scriptures in Hinduism, there was a time when the gods did not live in temples. They did not live in statues. They did not live in myths or metaphors or the fading memories of old men reciting hymns by firelight. They lived here, on this earth, among human beings, close enough to touch. Indra, the king of the gods, rode his chariot across the sky and left trails of light that glowed for days. Agni, the god of fire, was not a symbol invoked during ritual. He was a living presence inside every flame, every hearth, every ember that floated upward into the dark. Varuna, the keeper of cosmic order, stood at the edge of oceans and spoke to fishermen who recognized his voice. And then, one by one, they left. The Vedas did not call it an accident. They did not call it a punishment. They called it inevitable. They gave it a timeline, a structure, and a reason. And that reason, when you finally understand it, changes how you see not just Hinduism, but the entire relationship between the human world and the divine. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the gods came, why they couldn't stay, what they left behind, and what the Vedas say is coming next. If you're new here, subscribe to Atlas of Religion. We go deeper into the world's oldest questions than any other channel. The Vedas divide cosmic time into 4 great ages called yugas. Each one is shorter than the last, each one darker, each one further from the source. The first age is Satya Yuga, the age of truth, and the world it describes is almost impossible to imagine from where we stand now. Human beings in Satya Yuga lived in perfect alignment with a principle called Rita, cosmic order. Not because they were disciplined, not because they followed rules, because the impulse to deceive, to hoard, to take more than you give, had simply not yet arrived in the human heart. It was absent the way a disease is absent from a body that has never been exposed to it. In this age, the gods needed no temples. That detail alone should stop you. In the age when the divine was most present, most woven into daily life, there were no temples, no shrines, no elaborate rituals to bridge the gap between human and God. Because there was no gap. The temple, the Vedas quietly suggest, is not a sign of spiritual flourishing. It is a sign of spiritual distance. It appears when the gods have moved far enough away that human beings need architecture to reach them. The relationship between gods and humans in Satya Yuga was sustained by something called yajna, sacred exchange. Humans offered their attention, their devotion, the clarified butter poured into sacred flames. The gods returned coherence, meaning, the sense that nothing in the universe was wasted. It was a reciprocity, a conversation between 2 orders of being, conducted through fire and sound in the precise geometry of ceremony. And it was effortless, as natural as breathing. But then, something shifted, not dramatically, not through a war or a catastrophe, through something far quieter. The human mind began to want things differently. In Satya Yuga, desire and fulfillment existed without a gap between them. The earth was responsive. The tree offered fruit before the hand reached for it. The water rose to meet the thirsty mouth. But slowly, imperceptibly, a space opened between wanting and receiving. And in that space, a new kind of experience became possible. The experience of lack, of reaching and not finding, of asking and waiting in silence. A mind that discovers waiting begins to plan. A mind that begins to plan starts inhabiting imagined futures at the expense of the present moment. And the gods, the Vedas suggest with extraordinary delicacy, can only be met in the present. They exist at the intersection of the human and the eternal, and that intersection is always now. When human awareness drifted from now into the corridors of future and past, it did not close the door on the divine. It simply walked away from it. The door stayed open. The gods remained exactly where they had always been, but the beings who might have walked through were no longer standing at the threshold. The second age, Treta Yuga, shaped itself around this new condition. For the first time, ritual became necessary. The connection between human and divine was still real, but it required effort, a deliberate turning of attention toward the sacred, rather than an effortless resting within it. The first priests were not creating something new. They were responding to something lost, building structures that could hold open a door that was beginning to close. Satya Yuga was still magnificent. It produced the full flowering of Vedic ritual, the most sophisticated ceremonial science ever developed by human beings. It produced the Ramayana and the Avatar Rama, who demonstrated that even in an age of increasing distance, a human life could still be lived in perfect alignment with dharma. But the wheel kept turning. After Treta came Dvapara Yuga, and four things disappeared from the world simultaneously: the direct vision of the gods, the longevity of human life, the natural fertility of the earth, and what Sanskrit calls ojas, the luminous vitality that fills a being when it is in full contact with the source of its own existence. All four receded together, as if they were not four separate things but four aspects of one thing: the quality of aliveness a world possesses when the divine is genuinely present within it. Something else happened in Dvapara Yuga that the texts mention with devastating understatement. The gods themselves began to grieve. The Vedas insist that the relationship between divine and human is not a hierarchy, but a mutual sustaining. The gods feed the world through presence and grace. The world feeds the gods through attention and devotion. When human awareness drifted too far from the sacred, something diminished at both ends. The gods did not grow angry when they were forgotten. They grew lonely. If this is changing how you think about the relationship between gods and humans, hit subscribe and like this video. Atlas of Religion does not stop at the surface. The Mahabharata locates the transition to the final age with extraordinary precision. It says Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, the age of confusion and forgetting, began on the day Krishna left the earth. Not on a calendar date, not during a planetary alignment. On the day a specific being, the eighth avatar of Vishnu, completed his time here and withdrew. Krishna's final moment is almost unbearable in its quietness. He sits alone in a forest. A hunter mistakes him for a sleeping deer and shoots an arrow that strikes the one vulnerable point on his body. Krishna thanks the hunter because the arrow was not a mistake but a completion. Then he ascends. Without spectacle, without cosmic fanfare, just a stillness where there had been a presence. And the Mahabharata says that the day after Krishna's departure, Kali Yuga fully descended, as if his presence alone had been holding the previous age in place, the way a hand holds a door open against a wind that has been pressing against it for a very long time. The seers who foresaw Kali Yuga described it with a precision that has disturbed scholars for centuries. They said wealth would become the primary measure of human worth. Religious practice would become performance, temples built with great expense, while the consciousness that once made temples unnecessary would be unknown as a concept. Knowledge would become a commodity sold for profit. The earth would lose its generosity, not as punishment, but because generosity is a quality of relationship, and humanity would replace reciprocity with extraction. But the most devastating prophecy was about memory. The seers foresaw that human beings would forget what they were. They would lose access to any direct experience of their own nature as something more than biology and social roles. The vast awareness the Upanishads call Atman, the self-identical to Brahman, the consciousness of the universe, would become a philosophical concept rather than a lived reality. And a humanity that has forgotten its own deepest nature has made itself unreachable by the divine. Not abandoned by the gods, unreachable. The door is not locked. The house is simply empty. But not all the gods left. The Vedic tradition preserves stories of beings called the Chiranjeevis, the immortal ones who remain on earth through the turning of the ages. Each one stays for a specific reason. Each one holds something the world cannot afford to lose. Hanuman stays because love does not release. The great devotee of Rama was granted immortality not as reward, but as cosmic necessity, because the Ramayana needed to exist not as text, but as living testimony. Somewhere in the world, someone who had actually known Rama, needed to still be present. The tradition says Hanuman goes to every genuine recitation of the Ramayana, and that the tears on the face of a devotee moved by the story are in some sense his tears. Parashurama, the sixth avatar of Vishnu, withdrew to the mountains to wait. He has been sitting in meditation since before Kali Yuga began, keeping sacred knowledge alive in his own body, not as text that could be corrupted, but as a living flame carried through the cold. He is waiting for Kalki, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, who will arrive at the very end of the Dark Age. Parashurama will be Kalki's teacher. The patience that requires hundreds of thousands of years of full awareness of the world's deterioration, holding your position and not intervening prematurely, represents something the Vedas consider among the highest forms of spiritual power. And then there is the Devi, the goddess, the feminine principle of the divine itself. The texts say something extraordinary about her. She did not withdraw the way the gods withdrew. She distributed herself. She became the world. Every river, every forest, every field where something grows from dark earth toward light. Every unexpected moment of beauty that arrives in the middle of ordinary life and produces in the witness something that has no adequate name, something like recognition, something like almost remembering a home you have never visited, but have somehow always known. The gods who left the sky are, in some sense, more present than ever. They are present in a way that requires a different quality of looking than the one this age teaches. The Kali Santarana Upanishad says one thing remains fully available in Kali Yuga. Not elaborate ritual, not the direct vision of the gods, not the classical path of meditation that earlier ages supported. What remains is the name, the spoken name of the divine. A name in the Vedic understanding is not a label. It is a resonance that carries within itself the essential nature of the being it refers to. The name of the divine is not a pointer toward the divine. It is a form of the divine. It is the entire ocean in a single drop of water. And the Bhagavata Purana says something counterintuitive about Kali Yuga that most people miss entirely. In this age, the mere speaking of the divine name, with even a fraction of genuine feeling, carries an effect that would have required years of rigorous practice in earlier ages to produce. The age is darker. The path is harder. But the door, for those who find it, opens more readily than it ever did before. The seers called it the grace of the difficult age. The Vedas did not end with the darkness. They described Kali Yuga as the shortest of the 4 ages. The wheel has a bottom, and the bottom is also a turning point. At the end of Kali Yuga, Kalki arrives, the final avatar of Vishnu, on a white horse, not as a conqueror, but as a restorer, one who walks into the world that has forgotten, and by his presence alone begins to remember it. And after Kalki, the cycle begins again. Satya Yuga returns, not as repetition, but as renewal, a new golden age refined by the particular difficulty of having survived a very long darkness while still carrying the light. Where did the gods go? The Vedas answer with something that is not quite a statement and not quite a riddle. They say the gods did not go anywhere. They are where they have always been, at the level of reality that underlies the visible world. What changed was not their location, but the capacity of the world to perceive them. The veil thickened. The receiver lost sensitivity. The signal, as strong as it ever was, began to produce only silence in ears tuned to other frequencies. The Upanishads say it with a simplicity that has the quality of something bottomless. Thou art that. You are what you seek. The distance between the seeker and the sought is the distance between the eye and what the eye is looking with, which is to say, no distance at all. The gods did not forget us. They never could. And the dawn the Vedas foresaw, the same dawn that has been waiting at the edge of the horizon since before any of us were born into this particular darkness, is not a promise.
darkness. According to the seers who saw both the descent and the ascent from the same mountaintop with the same clarity, it is a certainty. The breath is almost over. The wheel is turning. And the last chapter of this story is not the darkness. It is what the darkness was always making room for.
Thank you for watching. If this video shifted something in how you see the oldest scriptures on Earth, subscribe to Atlas of Religion. We go where other channels won't, and we're just getting started. If you want to keep going, the next video is right here. I'll see you there.